Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. Very happy to welcome. And I said I was not going to butcher her name. I'm going to let her say her name. My guest.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, she is, and this is what I read, a freedom illuminator, embodiment queen, human MRI, and psychic surgeon. So tell us a little bit more about you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I would love to start with just by greeting people in your community. And I want to do it in my native language, which is Dumelang. And in a direct translation, Dumela is more like agree, So with that, the question that I love to ask is kind of like when you come in and sit here with Kyle, and as we're having this conversation, what are you agreeing to? And normally when we do this greeting, Dumela and Lokai, like somebody responds, and Lokai is more like asking, where are you? Locate yourself. And when you're talking about mindfulness, it's kind of like being fully present. And also, one thing that I just want to say, forefront is kind of like even when you listen, don't just listen with the mind, but also connect to the body and see what your body resonate with, rather than what we just hear and understand, because we have attached meanings to words. So when you just come in to say, I'm just going to be present and see what will come up, you may have some awareness that you normally don't have. So Almost is my name, and I reside here in Germany for 10 years now. But I originally come from Botswana in Southern Africa. It's a landlocked country between South Africa, Namibia, Zimbabwe, and all that. Yeah, so I've been here on a journey, an amazing journey, where at some point I just defined myself by whatever that I was born into and knowing what life is as everybody knew it, and went ahead with my life living as an accountant. And I just love the accountant role. That's the identity that I love, plus the money. But I didn't like the stress and everything that came with it, until life happened, where a lot of things they say it doesn't rain, it pours. And I went through that period where it was really pouring. And at that moment, I didn't know who I was. And again, it's also because of that that I get to meet you here.
And you went through a lot. I read that you had kind of been separated from your children for several years.
Yeah,
Do you mind sharing that story?
I would love to. Because as we're talking about who we are, especially as women, uh, we are often defined by the roles that we take, whether you are a wife, whether you are a mother, whether even as a daughter, right? Um, I believe even son, there is a part of us that is defined by, like, when we look at our fathers to say, how does your father or your mother feel about you? And a mother is a very big, important role, because um we are being carried by in her womb before we are born. So even when we have kids, it's something that we connect to before we even see that human aspect. It's kind of like there is this soul or whatever that you just connect with, and you just know whatever that is going on. So where I was just me enjoying life, and then I had these children, and all of a sudden perspectives in life changed, the meaning of life changed, and I strived to be more, to do more for my children. Even though I was not being more, it was more like doing, right? We often do a lot for our children. I want to do a lot for my children. And I was completely absorbed in the accountant role, where I was doing a lot for them, but I was also absent. As much as our father was absent, but I was also absent because I was grinding, right? But then it got to a point where at some along the way, the company that I was working for was downsizing. And I opted out because I didn't like the job. So I was like, there's an opportunity for more great things. And I left the company. But along that, taking those benefits, some things happened where my mother started getting sick. My younger brother had a near-death accident. And while I was going through that, it just happened towards my mother's death that my boyfriend started going to court. fighting for the custody of the children, and we were not even married. So when I went to court for the first time, I had all the confidence in the world. Come on, I was taking care of these children. My younger daughter was 5, my son was 7. I was taking care of my children by myself, so there's no case. So, but when I went to court, I was hit with something different, a judicial injustice that actually I had to take all the benefits that I took from this company and spend them in lawyers. I hired 7+ lawyers, and I lost every single case. And the betrayal that I felt at that moment, because I talk about the wounds that we can't run away from no matter what, which are the 4 core wounds of betrayal, abuse, abandonment, and rejection. So the betrayal that hit me at most at that moment was the fact that I was not married to this guy. He was not taking care of these children. I actually even reported him for maintenance. There was evidence. And even when he was fighting for the children, he was taking the children to go live with his girlfriend slash sister-in-law. He was in a relationship with his sister-in-law.
Oh
But the
no.
judicial system, the judicial system found it right. Exactly. That's how I felt when it all was happening. It was kind of like, this is crazy. But yes.
My goodness. So was what he was doing a vendetta against you, or I mean, what was his reason for wanting to take the kids?
By then I had met by then I had met my boyfriend who, it was my boyfriend then, who is now my ex-husband. So
Mhm.
he knew that I'm planning to move out of the country. I think somebody shared the news before I was even ahead with my stuff. So it was more like he knew that I'm not going to leave the country without the children. So it was more like to get back at me. I don't know for what reason, because the girlfriend was even more in the forefront. It was kind of like I have children with a sister-in-law than him. Yeah, so that was the main reason. And it was tough because especially my son, he was longing for the father figure, and with all the mind games and all that was playing. And as a mother, especially if you are not working at the moment, you feel bit down already. You've lost your mom like immediately after that, and all this start going on. It's kind of like they started kicking me when I was down. So I just felt lost, confused, powerless, and also questioning that, like, what is the meaning of life? What's the point of me having these kids if I can't even be with them? And I still remember one conversation that I had with the social worker by then. She called me and invited me to her office to go have a conversation about how we're gonna go around the children and all that. And I'm like, my response was like, so you want me to come and have a conversation with the father of these children and his girlfriend, and I have to come alone? And I'm like, I'm not sitting in that meeting. And she said, but you're gonna have to come to this meeting, whether you like it or not. And I said, no. And even the things that you're talking about, it for me, it's very unethical. And her response was, you are very naive. If only you can know that these children are gonna live by this woman's house. So,
Mm.
yeah. So I went through that, and at the end, I ended up moving without my children. I still tried to fight the whole thing while I was here. And through the 5 years that I was separated with my children, my prayer, my gratitude every day was, I'm just grateful that nothing major has happened to my children, no accident, no disease or whatever. So that was my grace. And
Mm.
guess what? Until one day I received a call. I was at work, and this guy said, you need to sit down for this one. And I sat down, and he said, Fiona had an accident. She was bitten by 2 Rottweilers, and she may never walk again. She started narrating what happened. It teared the veins and whatnot, what. And the strength that I had of a fighter, of I'm gonna kill for my children, and all that at that moment dissolved. And the words that I said were, I don't be strong anymore. I don't want to be strong. And I would say that surrender, the not wanting to be strong, somehow changed something in my system altogether. And I still went back home with the to just go see how things were. They were bad and all that. And that's this time I met another social worker who's dealing with the medical issues and all that, which is totally a different department. And I had my hope again, like, oh my God, somebody's gonna help me. I started sharing the whole thing. She said, give me your files. I gave her the files. I'm like, thanks God. Because if I have the support of the social workers, I can go back to court again with the ninth lawyer or whatever. That's me. And she took the files for 3-4 days. And after 3-4 days, she gave me back the files. In her words, she said, your case is very simple. If you are meant to win it, you would have. But my darling, what you're dealing with here is a spiritual war. I can't help you, unfortunately.
But you kept the faith.
I kept the faith, but at that moment, I didn't know what's next. But still, there was a part of me that still wanted to go the judicial path. Until I got back to Germany, now trying to figure out how I can go around this, because I tried to write to many systems, even in different countries here in Germany, different countries or whatever that helps with the rights, but I was not getting any response. But when I got here, while I was still trying to look for the ninth lawyer, I just heard the words, you are not going to win. The odds are against you. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? And the response was, you gotta do the work. You gotta do the work. And what work? Forgive. That's the first word that came. And I laughed, the laughter of a crazy woman. That was like, seriously, that was me, like laughing with tears strolling down my cheeks. And I'm like, you're crazy. Whatever that you are, whatever voice that you are, this is insane. Forgive. Do you really know what happened? You're telling me to forgive? I was, and then the response was, do you want your children? How? And I said, yeah, I want to have my children back. Yeah, but you need to do the work. And I said, I don't know how to forgive. I don't know how to forgive. And I was just asked to sit in a meditation every day and open up to receive what is coming through. And my question was, how would I know if I have forgiven? Because I don't know what forgiveness is. And what I'm feeling, I don't even understand what that means or how it works, And I was just told, if you have forgiven, the heart will open and you'll have your children back. Yeah. So I just went with that blind faith, because besides all that was happening, being an accountant and all that, I always had my own connection with God, even though it was not more going to the church thing, because I had a religious background, but along the way I left the whole thing, and just started doing my own thing. But I had a connection, an intimate connection just with me and God, as I believed we were having conversation with things that were just happening in my life. And when I asked a question, I would receive an answer. And the thing is, even when I'm talking about asking a question and receiving an answer, when I had these two children with the father of my children, I remember at some point I even asked, is this man really meant for me? Because of the things that were just happening. I asked that question on a Monday. On a Friday night, my phone rang and this man called me. I picked up the phone. I didn't say anything. I put it on my ear. And he started talking to his girlfriend, just calling his name, how much he loves him and all that. And when he heard my voice, he dropped. And I was like, God, you show up in different ways, But at that time, even when I received that message, I still went ahead and allowed my wounds to decide for me and stayed in the relationship until I was guided to, I would say, guided to this guy's email, because the feeling just came through and just say, open his email. And I just opened it. I said, I don't know the password. And I just had the download of the password. Crazy, right? But I typed the password and it opened. And I read the messages and I went back home. I skipped the one with the sister-in-law. When I got home, the question was, why didn't you open the email that you didn't open. I'm like, okay. Because I didn't have internet at home. So I went back to work the following day. I opened and I found this love that has been going on even the time when I was pregnant with my second daughter, you know. So it's one of those things that the signs were there and I was being led at all times, but I was not willing to listen. But here I was in a disparate situation, powerless situation where I felt like I have no choice. That's when I paid attention to this voice that I always pushed aside, you know. So I trusted this voice. And then it happened that one day I was just coming from work while I was still doing the work that I didn't even understand where it's going to lead me. And I had this nudge, just sit down and write, sit down and write. And I sat down and I took a paper and started writing. And in this question, I was writing, who are you without your mother, your father, your religion, your children? Actually, it didn't say your children first, your wife, like everything, even the money, like mentioning almost everything that we identify with and all that. Who are you? I started writing. And at the end, I said, who are you without your children? That's when I don't know what was happening, but I started crying, like bawling really. And while I'm crying, I'm just stopping again, wondering, but who am I? I don't know who I am. I don't know. I would say that was like the journey, the awakening to finding me through this pain where I felt like I can't survive without my children. But at that moment, it was kind of like a message of find who you are. Who are you without these children? And even when I was getting angry along the way with all that was happening, and feeling like basically, I would say, as much as it was right, but there was a part of me that was like judging and angry with this man and feeling like I can do a better job, which we often do that. But at that moment, the question that I was asked, I would say it's a message that came through was, the problem is you think these children belong to you. You think you own them, but
Right.
they're not here for you. You were given these children to take care of them. They don't belong to you. They're on their journey, on their path. But the question is, are you willing to follow your own path? So that was like, yeah, just going back and what do I know about life and what is all this? Because as a woman, we identify with the children. It's kind of like that's something that esteems us. You're a great woman. You do this to your children. When your child goes and have their own personality and do what they do, there's a part of us that feels like we have failed, and it's because of me, and all that. We don't accept. First thing, we don't accept our children as they are. We want them to be something else. And with this, and at times this ownership of thinking we own them or they are the only reason why we are there, we enforce all our energy, our desires, or whatever that we failed in, we want them to go and make us proud. So we push this into the children and vice versa. So through this process of pain and confusion and everything and all this being coming through, where at some point I was just told it's time for you to do what you came here to do, you know. And then as I asked, what is that? The response was a new way of being. Because my question was, well, what do I say to people? Go teach them a new way of being. So I was taken through this journey, this initiation of breaking down whatever that I thought life was about, whatever that I identified with, whatever that for me, it's kind of like without family, especially when it comes to children, or even killing for the children, because that's one thing that if I knew how, I would have killed that man for my children, but
Yeah.
I didn't know how. But that's the thing. I was just told this is not who you came here to be. That's not how you resolve this. So I was taken through this painful process of finding who I am, basically, which up to date, I would say it was a painful process. But at the same time, if I have to go through it again to find me, to find my purpose, what turns me on, I'll do it again. Yeah.
The thing is with God is that the things he tells us are usually against human nature. Because forgiving somebody, especially when they've done something horrible against you, that is so hard to do. But God says you need to forgive. And it's more about you than it is about them, because you've released that hate out of your heart. You don't have that weighing you down anymore. And you've kind of putting a burden on them, and it's been taken off of you.
Yeah,
So and also sometimes we go through these kind of things because we do need to find out who we are.
absolutely.
When I was married the first time, I totally forgot who I was. I forgot about the things that I really loved and really enjoyed. And I spent my time drinking, doing drugs, anything to numb the pain, to forget who I was. And then once she was out of the picture, that 10-year journey that I took to find out who I was and then who I wanted to be with, God actually put the right woman in my life.
Ooh,
And the journey is still going on. I'm still discovering new things about myself. And I don't have to focus so much on finding things that I enjoy as much as finding out what God wants me to do next.
absolutely. And I just love what you shared because that's just it. And before I can come back to the marriage and the drinking, because I come from a family where there was that drinking. My father was drinking a lot. And guess what? My boyfriend was drinking. My ex-husband was drinking as well. Like there was that alcoholic thing. And I want to touch on that. But before I can go that, I want to go a little bit to the forgiveness part because at times, especially, I find this especially in the spiritual community or in the positive self-development, positive thing, where at times something happens and someone's just forgive. Forgiveness is very important and it's shifting in so many ways. But it's not something that we do from the mind or just thinking that I'm just going to forgive and then I'll get a certain outcome. It requires us to be with ourselves, to be with what is, to feel and honor that aspect of us that is hurting. Like one thing people ask me, but how did you go through this? I still remember even when I told my ex-husband that, oh, I'm over this and I've forgiven my boyfriend and all my ex-boyfriend and all that. And he was mad, like, what do you mean you're forgiving him? This guy is a monster and whatever. And I'm like, I don't feel that anymore, because I felt it, I processed it, and I honored the part of me that was hurting. And somehow, with the help and the energy that was coming through, it dissolved all of that. So I just wanted to emphasize that to say, don't rush to, because people have this thing that either someone completely not wanting to forgive, which is also okay. You get to honor that. If you are there, that's fine. Or even saying, I don't know, but I'm willing to. Another thing is also not, people at times will say, when someone say forgive, someone, I have forgiven this person, but you can feel the anger that is coming, like I've forgiven, but when you're forgiven, there is no that comes through, right?
Yep.
So that's also a sign that you have not forgiven. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't, it's just too much. I can't, I don't even know how, and I don't want to, just honoring where you're at. Because if you rushing through to say, I have forgiven, but yet you still have all that here, that's what's going to stop the flow in our life. Whatever that you want, whether you want love, whether you want prosperity, whether you just want to be happy and enjoy your life, you can't if you're still holding into this thing. So I just wanted to emphasize that point, to say, honor where you at and be open to be led or to be guided or even ask for help. It's one of the things that is very important when you're going through this, because I work with the body, and often I find where these emotions are stored in our body. When someone say ex-boyfriend or that, the body lights up. It's kind of like, oh, I'm still here, or wherever the emotions are stored in the body. So this is always fascinating. And talking about where we find ourselves, whether it's in a relationship, because like I said, I come from a background of alcoholics, especially on my father's side, you know, and there was that the dysfunction basically in my family was caused by this whole alcoholic, where there was fights and all that, that some of them I actually just blocked because it was too much of a painful experience as a child. So I blocked it away. But along going through this, even the time when the first question one of the questions that I was asked as I was angry with the father of my children, I was asked, what is it that attracted you to him? And at that moment, I was like, what attracted me to him? And then it dawned on me that I was looking for acceptance.
Mm.
I just wanted to be accepted.
Yep.
I was in my teenage stage at that time, like 20 something, and I loved going out, drinking on the weekends. And then all of a sudden I started smoking. I come from a very traditional family. So, and again, as an African, when you smoke a woman, I mean, now it's better, but still there is kind of like, this woman, she smokes and all that. So there was that. So I met my ex-boyfriend who, like, the mother was smoking, like, and it was comfortable. And, you could be there and just do whatever that you do. So it was that acceptance that I was looking for, but at the same time, there were these other things that I had, these wounds that I had to deal with, like what happened with all the cheatings, especially with the system, which was like the most painful one, and then taking my children. And then I've met a guy who ended up marrying me, like my ex-husband. There was also alcoholic thing, where now I had to face that. And as I was going through all that as well, I remember in one question that came through in one of the meditation was, what part of you has a problem with his drinking? Because at times we judge, like you said, you're drinking. At times you can be in a relationship with someone and you don't like what they're doing, but at the same time, the insecurity part of us, the wounded part of us feels like I can save them. And maybe when I save them, I have to just go through it. Maybe at the end, they will love me and all that. But at the same time, still judging who they are being, and it's kind of like it's a conflict, confusing, codependency
Yeah.
situation. So I was in that situation. And at the end, we ended up like when the children came, now I had to be the mother and not the inner child who just wanted that, like, I wanted my father to love me. So it's kind of like I found my father in him, right? So it was the inner child in me. At the end, when the children came and I had a child with him, it was kind of like I get to be a mother again. So I became something that he was not used to, where it's kind of like now I have a voice, I have a say, and this is how it's gonna be. And it's like, I want the woman that I met, and it's kind of like, that woman is no more. This is me now. And he was not even agreeing with my purpose, especially this healing, the whole godly thing. It's kind of like, for him, it's kind of like God does not exist and all that. So those were the fights that we had. But when it came to my purpose, I was not willing to compromise. It was kind of like, if all this is the end, so be it. Because for me, this is what lights me up. This is what turns me on when you're talking about that sexual energy, which connects us to our purpose. What is it that turns you on? So we couldn't, not anymore. But still, the awareness that came through when I was in the meditation, when I was asked, what part of you has a problem with his alcohol? It's because I was still judging him and feeling like if he dealt with his alcoholism, maybe things would be better and all that. But at that moment, I had a download again to say, I don't have a problem with his alcohol and all that, but I have a problem with my father's alcoholism, because a part of me, that little young girl, is still wishing and hoping that my father can love me. So I attract the people with the same traits, still with the hope that I can rescue them and all that. But that is coming from the wound, the wound, right? It's not like pure divine love where it's kind of like, I just love him and let him be and all that. Because if at all you are accepting of the other as they are, the energy is not of wanting someone to be something that they are not. And actually, it's a better space for someone to heal when you are holding space for them, not from judgment or wanting them to change so that they can love you, it's a different thing. But at the end, one gift that I realized, as much as I love this man, but the gift that I can give him is to stand on my ground on who I am and what I'm here to do, because I don't want to resent him in the future, feeling like he took my purpose away from me or anything. And when I do that, I'm also giving him an opportunity of healing, whether he finds someone who is going to feel like now I'm willing to be a better person for my partner or whatever that happens. So at times the divorce is not the worst thing that happens. It opens us for something totally different. Like you said, your wife came through at the right time. And I also had an opportunity of meeting my soulmate. While I was still married, I met this beautiful soul and experienced the love that I never experienced before. That's when I knew that, oh, there is something better for me in the future. So it helped me to go through that painful divorce as well, which also there is also a journey, another twist where my ex-husband still did the same thing that my ex-boyfriend did and took the child away from me. And I had to go through another layer of betrayal where I would say this one took me to the dark night of the soul where I just wanted out of life. I wanted to die because my ex-husband was there for me throughout the whole 5 years. And I felt like if it wasn't because of him being there, being supportive, maybe I would have gone then. So now him doing that again, it was kind of like, God, you flipping kidding me. I was like, you kidding me. This is not, you know. Yeah, but so is life because it's not about what happens to us, it's who we are being. And when
Yep.
you are anchored and connected to yourself, because when you look at it, when I left my home country and moved here, this man was like my anchor. So it's kind of like, oh, at least I have someone, and I just became this child who wanted to be taken care of. And that little child who was afraid, now it's kind of like, okay, show me the world. What can I do? I still remember even at times, what do you want? It's kind of like, I don't know, what do you want? I didn't go towards things that I love. And you mentioned that as well, that you were not doing things that you loved before. And I was not doing that. I was just like, oh, whatever that makes you happy. And I was busy sailing. Sailing is great, but it's not like my passion that turns me on. What turns me on is the thing that I do now. But at times we forget, we lose ourselves. That's why I talk about freedom of individuality, the importance of finding who we are. And then also, even when we come together, that wholeness, it doesn't take away from you are you and your wife is her. She has the things that are of interest that lights her up that may not light you up. And it's also, I think, it's one of the things that also add into the conversation where you can learn something from her and she can learn something from you. So at times we lose ourselves in each other because of the wounds which comes from our past backgrounds, whatever that we experience. And then it's kind of like, I want someone to love me. You just like the last thread of hope. And then when things happen, like I went through another layer of betrayal, then what happens? So I'm glad that when all that happened, I was more awakened to who I am, to my journey, and it hit me. I can't say, oh, I was just thriving through it. No, I didn't. Even the divorce, when I was going through the divorce, my human was scared, but my soul was dancing. And I loved honoring the two aspects, where my soul knows that I'm guiding you to where and what you are meant to be. And my human is kind of like, oh my God. And even including the ancestors, because I could feel women who only knew who they were through the marriages, like literally many voices, kind of like, what do you want? What do you want? Why don't you just stay in this marriage? Why don't you just stay in this man? And even some aspects of myself that felt like it's not safe for me to have a voice to know what I want. It's better I just allow this man to lead. And it's quite interesting because I had journeys where literally I was shown by this other aspect of mine, showing me like places like, oh, you can go to Paris and all that and all that. And as much as like this aspect were saying that I know what I want, it's kind of like I'm experiencing different aspects of myself. And at the same time, I felt like literally my right hand moving, and there was this obsession grabbing into my heart, kind of like I own you kind of energy. And I'm like, what the heck is this? And these are the energy that it happens unconsciously, where some people find them confused. They want out, they don't want out. I want this, I don't want this. And we get to rid of all these voices. Some of the voices are not ours, they're ancestral energy. Some of them, it's like what you're told as you're young. So when you clear all these things, now you get to have that clarity of who you are and what you really want, which also takes us back to the sexual energy where we connect to that energy. You feel turned on, literally like that holiness and all that, but it's more of the desire to create more, to be more, which is, another way of totally being, because you come alive.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. You have gone through a lot, and we if you read the Bible and you read about Job and all the things that he went through, and you think if anybody should have gave up, it should have been him. And listening to a lot of the things that happened to you, it's amazing that you didn't give up. You felt like it, but you didn't. And now you're trying to help other people. I know we don't have a lot of time left here, but you say you're a human MRI?
Yeah.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Human MRI, like my gift is also ancestral inherited, because as much as we're talking about clearing all the abuse, betrayal, and all that, all those generational toxic patterns, there is also some wisdom that is calling us, which along the way I was also told, go back to your roots, where I went back, and while I was healing all these things, then I found my gifts like connected deeply to that. So my gift basically is when I connect with someone, I get to know everything that is happening in their body, like every single thing. If there is abuse, I just know the body kind of like communicates with me. And the surgery part is basically when we do the work, I remove that. It doesn't matter how much pain you have, mental, whatever that you have, emotional pain that you have. That's what I just get to. I know where it is, and I know how to remove that, so that we can be in the body. Because when we go through different experiences, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, there's a part of us that leaves the body. And this is why most people feel like I've been doing a lot of work, but nothing is happening. Nothing is happening because you are doing a lot of work, but you are not embodied. You are not in your body. It's kind of like, oh, I'm gonna clean that house, but you're not living there. So what are you cleaning if you go somewhere, if you are somewhere else and trying to clean the house here? So I get to be in the body and do all those things. And the magical things that happen, one of the mind-blowing things, I love the inner child, because that's the part that often it just comes through. Sometimes it comes through crying, sometimes it's scared. So it's unapologetic. Even if I can say, okay, let's have a clarity call and see what is happening. I will want to ask some questions. But when the inner child comes through with a lot of emotion and all that, I have to drop everything and attend to the inner child, because it has been screaming and wanting attention, and no one was listening, no one was home. And another thing that also happens when I talk about this, it can be the name, where we talk about your name, we connect to the name and find out what frequency does your name have, because your name has a frequency. And when you're talking about whether it's money, bank balances, and all that, it's your name that you are using. For women, we often get married and we change names. It's not about, oh, I'm just married and this is my same name. You are taking into the ancestral lineage of that name. So there is a lot that we pick up on. And another thing that also happens when I do this work, that is just like fascinating and weird for other people. I was talking to this other young lady the other time, and she's telling me, we're talking about the abuse that happened, and she's telling me about her relationship and how she really loves this guy, but at the same time, she feels like she's pushing the guy away. And at that moment, what came through her body, it was the disgust. I was feeling all sorts of nauseous, and I'm like, "Ooh, you are disgusted by this guy." So I started going into this energy of nauseousness, disgust, what is happening? And she was surprised and said, that's how I really feel, actually. But we traced it, and we went back to the 10-year-old child who, and there was a moment where she felt disgusted by her father because the father was never present, and then he will come with all the gifts and all that. And for him, it was kind of like, man, like, and he said, I don't want to see you again. And there was something that
Mm.
logged in him. And for her, the relation with the father, plus the abuse that happened, the molestation that happened, it kind of like anchored that in her system. And that was her relation with man in her life. So it's things like that that I just get to pick up the name and the frequency that you're holding, where the emotions are blocked, because all these things, this is what actually cause disease in the body.
Mm.
So sometimes you feel it as pain, because I have people where I remember there was a guy who came through, he was a business person and he was busy doing his work and all that. And when he came to me, the first thing, actually, we didn't connect with him wanting work. We're just chatting about something else. And first thing that came through was the numbness of his whole left arm and all that, the pain around the chest area. And I said, "You really struggling? You have a pain." I started mentioning what is happening. And then he said, "I would like to have a conversation with you because I have a problem with that." And when we spoke, he said, "I've been to the doctor and the doctor said they couldn't find anything, but I knew something is up." And actually, I decided to increase my insurance claim. And I'm saying, and sometimes that's how we think, especially guys, it's kind of like, okay, if I die, at least I want to leave some money my children, to my children and my wife. So I get to work with him and clear all that was suppressed. And with him as well, he had an issue or a history where the father somehow went to prison when he was young, So he was overworking himself to prove and be better than his father and all that. You understand? It's not like something that turns him on. I love this work. I love whatever that he was doing. It was kind of like the fear that's logged in him. I don't want to lose this. I don't want to be like my father. I don't want to fail my mother and my wife and all that. So all these things, they create a poison in the body that also becomes, it also blocks your prosperity, your love and whatever that you want. So he was going to repeat the same history of him dying, chasing money, like his father went to prison. Right. So these are things that we dismiss, but they play out in our life. So these are the things that I would say I pick up in the body. And what I love about this, that people who are often not attuned or as in not connected, or even maybe they forgot about whatever that happened, especially men. Men often don't talk about whatever emotions that are going on. So for me, it's kind of like it's mind-blowing in the sense that it doesn't matter what someone is saying. I get to have a conversation with the body and see what the body is holding into. So that's what I do. And another example that I just want to give you again is this other man who I was working with. And the little what was kind of interesting is that he was disconnected as well, drinking, toxic relationship, and all that. And I had to connect with his inner child, And where was the inner child? I crossed beyond the beyond. His mother was dead. And I found this inner child, like the way I came through. This inner child was sitting just there by the corner, and the mother is busy having a conversation with other people. Like that's like the visual that I was given, having a conversation with other people, and the little boy is there, feeling abandoned and alone and all that. And as I saw this little boy, he was just so happy, and I just picked him up and he was happy to come through. And when I shared with him what is happening, he just started crying, because a part of him is still holding into the mother. If my mother was here, life would be, or maybe longing for that love from his mother. But there is a point in life where we are called to become our own parents. Sometimes life happened for us to be the mother, the father that our inner child longed for. So when we heal, it doesn't only strengthen the relationship that we have with ourselves, it also strengthens the relationship with everyone, because we live in a relational world. Whether you're in business, relationship, whatever that you're doing, it's relational. So the inner child is a big part, and it's also hold the keys to our vision, our purpose, and all that. So that's how I can sum it up. And this is also the aspect that, even when I talk about the sexual energy, that's the aspect that takes me to the abuse that has happened, that many have either suppressed and forgotten about. But the inner child always takes me to say, hey, this is what is happening here. And when we clear and connect with that, people wake up in a different level. Because when I talk about sexual abuse, one thing that came through for me, like when I was just going through the downloads, I was just asked, just go do a bit of, like, go Google and find out what antidepressants, for instance, if you went through life, there are times where you took antidepressants and all that, which it feels better because it produces certain feel good hormones in the brain, but they don't come from the gut. So in a way, they disconnect us from the body and causes that sexual dysfunction and all that. So it's different when you go to the core and heal and connect to your body in a different way so that your body can have the intelligence that it has, because our body is intelligent and function the way that it's meant to function. So that's what I do. That's why I talk about being embodiment, is like connecting with your body, connecting with your inner child, connecting to your sexual energy, and fully living the life that you are meant to live, not based on the old patterns that you were born into.
You know, they love to throw medicine at you whenever you go to these doctors and you talk about, oh, you know, I'm feeling depressed. And most of those medications usually end up making you feel worse, or they just don't work at all. Some of them you feel like a zombie. Yeah, they didn't work for me. And there's a lot of times I felt worse than before I started taking them. And maybe this sounds crazy, but my belief is we should be able to have doctors that that are alternative medicine style doctors, and our insurance pay for it, because meditations helped me more than any pill ever did.
Absolutely. It's not crazy. I agree with you. And or even working together in some way, the modern doctors and the whole work alternative medicine that we do, I think there can be great results there. Because I also had this one lady that came through, and she was scheduled for surgery as well. Like, she has been in pain for years, but the surgery was scheduled like way ahead of time. And she said, I actually at that point when she said, I want out. Like, that's how painful it was.
Yeah.
And I worked with her, and the fourth week she went back to do the whole test with the doctor, and all the cysts and all that she had endometriosis. All of that was gone, low blood cleared, everything, and
Oh,
she's back to
wow.
living her life. Yeah.
Yeah, believe me, I understand that feeling. And sometimes I hurt so much, I wished I was gone. And I don't like being a burden on my family either, because when I'm hurting, I'm down for days. So, yeah. Now, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how would they do so?
I'm available in all social media as Gaomotsemme, Gaomotsemme. And I'll also give you a link if someone is interested in an introduction to my work. I would love to just jump in a 45 minutes call and find out what is happening, what you do with it afterwards. It's your business. I would have told you what is standing in your way. If you want to dive deep and work with me, that will be cool. So I'll share the link where they can schedule a call, and we can have a conversation to see what is standing in their way. I've had amazing, like I said, someone's surgery was canceled. I had someone who came with a foot very swollen, and within like 7 days, the swelling has reduced, but the pain was gone immediately, because it's kind of like with this magic, the work that I do, basically, it's kind of like I just pull out the pain when we start. So we're dealing with other things, but the pain was gone immediately. I've had someone who has not worked for 7 years because of a lot of things that happen at work, and she hasn't worked for 7 years, and we worked together for 12 weeks. And after we completed that, actually the work that she was called to, she didn't apply. Someone just called her husband and said, we need someone with the skills. Who do you know? He said, my wife. Okay, cool. We need a CV. And she went there. She dropped the CV, and they said, no, but we want you as a consultant. She said, I didn't want to work as a normal employee. And they offered her 90K for not working for 70 years to a 90K contract. So there's just
Wow.
amazing things that happened when you open up to receive you, because you get to receive you first, and then the universe get open up to you. I just call it making love with life. When your energy is fully turned on, you get to play with life. You are open to pleasure, which often a lot of people are not. And one thing that I just want to say is, talking about that pleasure, I just ask you, wherever that you are, whenever that you're listening to this, to just put both of your two hands on your reproductive area and just say out loud, I deserve pleasure. And don't say it from the mind. Connect to your body and see what your body is telling you. Because when people do this, some feel tears coming through, because it's not about the sexual pleasure, even though the sexual pleasure is also part of it, because there's nothing that is more amazing than a fully connected woman, attuned man meeting together and connecting at a deeper level, moving in a way that they don't have to say words of where I want to touch you. It's kind of like telepathically talking to each other about, like, they're just conversing without talking, right? Where someone knows what the other person needs, where they need to be touched. So it's making love with life. It's us also being present to say, where am I needed? What is it that I need to do? So that's the beauty of life, despite all that is happening, when you get to connect with this energy, you realize that, oh, it's beautiful to be alive.
Yeah. I want to ask you one more question before we go. Is this something
Yeah.
that is maybe been a tradition in your family, or is this something just a new experience that you had?
You mean the gift that I do?
Yes.
I come from, I would say, both maternal and paternal lineage of first line healers, but it's something that my parents didn't choose to do.
Right.
And the reason being, when you look at the ascension before doing this work or ascending or this whole evolution was not easy. So the like my mother's uncle is someone who disappeared for many years, like fully gone. Someone is gone, and they cried and forgot about his existence, and then he comes back fully embodied in his medicine, So there was that fear that if you accept this, then you might disappear for years. And then there are some people who it was kind of like an overload. They couldn't ground the energy. So it was kind of like being crazy or something like that. So most of I would say my family when I grow up is people who go to church, because I started having this knowledge when I was a child, and I would share, this is what is happening. And the first thing is kind of like, you better go to church, because otherwise you're going to end up being this traditional doctor. So many people ran to church to avoid doing these gifts. But here I am, I couldn't run away from it, because one of the experiences that I had when I was going through this, I still remember there was a time when I was basically leaving my body, and I went back to the time when I was born, and I was just crying, like, I don't want to be here, and then I was shown a lot of people in pain, a lot of people who are suffering in the world, like actually not just shown, but I was feeling all the cries, all the pain, all the prayers to God and all that. It's crazy, And after that, I was brought back to my body. And the question is, do you want to go through life just sitting with the gift that you have while people are suffering? So I had to say yes to this work.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I really, really appreciate it. And
Thank
I
you for
will put,
having me.
oh, of course, of course. I will put all your links in the description just to make it easy for folks to find you. And again, this has been a great conversation. You actually inspired me to come up with another idea for a show. I would like to get you and some other people that I know with abilities to come together, and we just
Awesome.
sit around and talk about that, because my wife, she also has people in her family that have these gifts, and some have steered away from it and some have embraced
Yeah.
it, and it's
Yeah.
fascinating to me. So, but
That would be nice. I would love that.
But again, thank you. And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button. And for my regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless, and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network